Hi there, this is Steve Spurrier. You can join University of Florida Hall of Famer Shane Matthews and also the two-time SEC Player of the Year every weekday as he brings you all you need to know about the Florida Gators, including news, analysis, opinions, and some of the biggest names in sports. You can find him on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Or you can watch him live at 8 a.m. on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter.
Good morning. It's a live edition of PodUp with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. Large enough to serve you, small enough to care. It is Friday. We'll have Graham Hall and JC on the program. If you missed it, you ain't got to worry about the NIL collectives anymore. Schools are paying the players. Why go to class? I'll talk about this in a minute. Golf cranks up today, try to defend their national title. They're out on the West Coast. Lacrosse plays at 3 o'clock to get into the national title game, and softball against the Baylor Lady Bears at noon at KSP. We're going to go to the Titan MR Hotline courtesy of Comfort Temp. JC?
Yeah.
Would you, if you were an athlete going to college now, would you go to class? Would you even go to college?
Oh, yeah. Well, only if it was in my contract. These guys are now professionals. Congratulations. 20-something million per team or school or something. They can spend it how they want. I saw that. I didn't want to get too deep in the weeds with all that because there's still a lot of legalities that have to be worked out. But this is where it was heading. Nobody doubted that. And here it is. Timing's funny, QB. You were only about 33 years away from being a pro quarterback at the University of Florida. Dadgummit.
Yeah.
I wonder how
basically now you can boo the hell out of all your players.
Yeah.
Like the National Football League. I guess I'm asking, and like you said, it's very early. But if JC gets 300 to, let's say you get $500,000 to come play fullback at Florida. Are you also going to get side money from the NIL collectives?
See, I don't know those rules yet. I didn't read it too deeply because, I want to see a little bit more of the framework of what it is they're talking about. But they agreed to also, back pay some of these guys going back as far as 2016. I mean, players that were playing 8 years ago, QB, are going to get part of a settlement right now. So I guess you only missed it by 30 – well, I can't do the
about 25 years.
About 25 years. Dadgummit, man, 25 years. You missed it. But that's all right. You had a good career in the NFL, made money.
But I guess also I'd like to know is so that so-called $20 million to be dispersed among your entire athletic program.
Yeah.
Boy,
if you want to you can
it's going to be tough to decide who you pay them who.
I mean, Skylar Wallace is sitting there thinking, hey man, what am I worth? What am I worth? And that running back over there at Florida is, starting and scoring touchdowns in the football game against Texas A&M. What am I worth now? I mean, we're going to have agents and all this crap. It's pro sports. They finally did it. QB, the thing that's funny is that I was, it's not funny, but I was watching yesterday the Locked On Canes podcast with Larry Blumenstein and Alex Dono.
Okay, hang on a second. Don't go any farther. Why in the hell were you listening to that?
It popped up I was working, and Florida's playing Miami in what you've coined as maybe the biggest game in 2 or 3 decades. It's a big one. And and so I was looking at some of these starting times of these games. I see where Florida and Texas A&M are now at 3:30. 2 weeks after the Miami game, and I was thinking about 3:30, hoping that, I hope there's some cloud cover for that one. But at any rate, the podcast was just over there, so I just clicked it to see what these guys were saying. And Larry Bluestein, whoever that is saying this is an 11-win team they have down at Coral Gables. Bad news for the Gators. I mean, they're going to score 40 to 45 points offensively. They've got a freak of nature at quarterback in Cam Ward. They've got Damian Martinez, a Heisman candidate from Oregon State. These are his words, not mine. I mean, although I don't know if you call him a Heisman candidate, but They have added so much depth at quarterback, running back, and wide receiver. The Gators are in trouble. This just flat out.
Well, you know what? We don't need to show up then.
Well, listen, 11-1, man. Larry's got them going 11-1. They've got great linebackers, great front seven. I mean, Mario's going to have a great year. So the Canes are coming 40 to 45 points a game, Larry says. So watch out.
All right. Well, I don't know who the hell Larry is. Larry's smoking something or
Locked on
drinking
Canes.
something.
You can look it up. Locked on Canes, man. They are loaded. They are so excited about starting the season, of course, in Gainesville against the Fighting Gators of the University of Florida. I think it's I had to watch it. I mean, this guy was just throwing it out there, man. He had no hesitation. 11-win team. It's an 11-win team. Yeah. Have they ever won the ACC? Have they ever won the ACC?
Never. They've never even played for the ACC championship. Think about that.
Just wondering.
Yeah, I had Heath Klein on a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about, because they were in those two silly divisions. I forgot, one was the Coastal, one was something else.
Atlantic.
And yeah, could never I for $1 million I couldn't tell you who was in each league. But he said, I couldn't remember, but he's like, yeah, the ACC and the people around college football were so worried that when they came into the ACC, where they put Florida State on one side and Miami on the other, that they were going to see a rematch every year. It has never happened, and they have never played for it. So
that's right. That's right. I mean, it's we've got Clemson and Georgia opening the season in Atlanta. That's a 12:00 noon game. I think those two teams have accounted for, I want to say something like 8 out of the last, I don't know, 8 out of the last 20 national titles, almost 50%. It's incredible. So we'll have that game in Atlanta. At Florida at 3:30. So you knew about that Texas A&M start, right? Yeah, I didn't know.
Yeah, they announced that like 2 weeks ago.
Okay, well, I missed it, but Connor Wigman is their quarterback, and I thought he was a pretty good player. But I'm not going to get too far ahead of myself. I was just reading up on some things, getting schooled up on some college footballs, even though we're in May. But
yeah, we got a bunch of people here chiming in here.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Let's get to some Facebook Lives.
By the way, I love that Florida script you got on the shirt there. I almost
this would be a Peter, as you call it, a Peter Miller T-shirt from the golf course.
But yeah, it looks great. Yeah, I almost.
It wasn't cheap. Good thing I won it.
Well, a friend of yours and mine up in Madison, Mississippi, Kyle says he wants to see that script across the helmet instead of Gators. He'd like to see that going across.
I don't like any. I don't like any script. I hate our helmet now, and I wouldn't want this on our helmet either. But.
Okay.
All right. So we're not going to discuss uniforms today. John says they said Power 5 conference. Who is the 5th conference? Are we counting the Pac-12? Well, when they're talking about that, yeah, because they got to go back when there used to be 4 Power 5 conferences. Now it's the Power 4, but they still going to have to pay those kids that played in the Pac-12.
I mean, it goes back to 2016, if I'm not mistaken.
Here's what Dan. It's a great question from Dan on Facebook Live, brought to you by Melon. How many schools can't pay $20 million?
Right, and
a lot.
That is true. Well, the TV revenues are going.
Well, your Power 4 schools are going to be okay. It still may hurt their budget, but again, I know they talked a couple of weeks ago about doing the group of 5, their own little playoff and stuff. I think they need to do that because I don't know how much money those kids are going to get. But it's freaking nuts, man. Tony says Ray Criswell is a family friend from way back. NFL punters in the 80s didn't make the millions like the guys do now. Just wrong place, wrong time. Yeah, I mean, I was a minimum salary guy. Salary guy now is a lot.
Yes.
I tell all these kids when I go do the, I guess for the last 10 years, I did the pregame show with Steve Russell, the Monday after the game, where we recap it. And, he's got all these producers and stuff that are in school. And I tell them, you guys were born at the wrong time because y'all have not experienced what college football should be like.
Right. Yeah.
Your mom and dad screwed y'all up.
So what is the guy who makes, straight A's in biology, or who's a law student or a medical student thinking right now that this guy across the room who's got these headphones on, hardly even listening to the lecturer, cashing $1 million a year because he can run fast. I mean, I don't know. I guess that's not a pertinent discussion, but I do think there's going to be some I don't know if I think there's going to be some jealousy out there. I think they're just going to have to control this somehow with each athletic department.
I've always, I've never thought a doctor, people like that should make more money than athletes, but it's the field you're in. It's just the TV money's out is crazy. I mean, we could sit here and do a 2-hour show on teachers' pay here in the state of Florida, how ridiculous it is. But
you mean on the low side? You mean on the low side?
Oh, it's horrible.
Right, correct.
Yeah. I mean, it's horrible. Gene wants to know, QB, how does someone win a t-shirt from the UF Golf Shop? Gino, you got to play competitive golf, Gene. You can't just go practice and go playing scrambles that you playing for free. All right.
Gino's biggest thing is what am I wearing and how many
and how can I play for free?
And how many likes do I get when I put it on Instaface? How many likes do I get when I put it on there with this outfit? That's Gino's golf. That's Gino golf. You know what, Gino? You could label that the GG label. Get a logo QB could draw up for you. And call it Gino golf and just be a fashion guy. Forget about scores, birdies, pars, greens and regulation. Just be a fashion guy, Gino. Fashion is your thing now, Gino.
On the Titan More text line from Brett and Jax, he says, "Good morning. Has Aaron Childs enrolled yet?" I do not know that, Brett. I will ask Graham Hall. He would have that answer.
Yes, the Graham Hall question for sure. That's definitely a Graham Hall question. Hey, let me switch gears and talk about Juan Soto, my guy, who is playing in a 1-year deal with the Yankees. Steinbrenner says he's open to an in-season discussion about extending and locking up Juan Soto. Here's what Juan Soto's done in 52 games. He's batting .312 with 13 homers and 41 RBIs. He sounds like Skylar Wallace. Juan Soto is going to be the next great Yankee. He loves it there, and they love him. And I'm excited because my Yankees, QB, are going to win the World Series. And by the way, the Celtics, these guys who were talking about how the Pacers were going to be running with the Celtics to make this I
think you said that the other day, by the way.
I did not say the Pacers. I said the Celtics. I said the Pacers. No, I think
you said the Pacers are pretty good. That's what you said.
No, come on. They're in the Eastern Conference Final, QB. But they won a hard series against the battered Knicks team. The thing is, the Celtics are not beaten up and battered. They'll win it in 5. And Dallas tonight, I think, beats Minnesota. You're looking at Luka and Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Good NBA final is what I'm thinking. The Mavericks and the Celtics. And that's tonight, the Rangers in New York. For all our New York viewers right now, better win game 2 because you don't want to fall down 2-0 to the Florida Panthers. You're pretty much out of it if that happens. So this is a must-win game for the Rangers tonight.
Silverback Concrete builds firm foundations for generations. You stand on it. We stand by it. We got JC on the Titan More hotline, courtesy of Comfort Town. Real quick, another text here.
11 wins, Miami.
What? 11? There is no way they win 11 games.
When's
the last time? They haven't won 11 games since like Jimmy Johnson was coaching.
It's been 24 years.
Philip in Enterprise, Alabama says, "Good morning, guys. Have you or JC ever played any of the Robert Trent Jones courses in Alabama?" I have.
Yes.
They're outstanding.
Oh, they're unbelievably good. I like the one in Birmingham, but the ones down in Dothan, Montgomery, it's just a golf in Alabama and Mississippi, and even in places in those 3 states, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, the courses are so fun. They're so they're different. They're hilly. There's elevation. I like those kinds of golf courses. We have flat ones here in Florida, which are great, and we have water and ocean, and that's that. But man, I love the golf courses up there in those states.
Chris in Cottondale, your buddy JC.
I like Chris. I'm kind
as
of
as a teacher and coach in this state. I need you to say horrible with more emphasis when you're talking about pay in this state. It's hard, Chris. It is absolutely ridiculous. I tip my hat to anybody that teaches and coaches any sport in the state of Florida. God bless you. But if I were you, I'd move in a heartbeat.
Now, I think he's in the Panhandle. If I think that's where
with that, and that's the best part of coaching and teaching in the state of Florida is the Panhandle. But I've said this multiple times because I travel the South.
Yes.
If I don't know why I didn't know this. I should have known this being a coach's son.
You should have.
But between the state of Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia,
oh man,
those are clearly better places to coach high school sports. Clearly,
seems like there's a lot more support for what they're doing,
and they just get it. They get
they dedicate. They're committed financially and every other way. And Georgia, as you have said, is just off the chain. It's so good. So it's kind of like areas of Texas too. I mean, Texas is wonderful. So.
Yeah. Well, Texas is a big ass state. So real quick, I got to get some of these texts or these Facebook lives. They're great.
Hey, good.
This one says here. Where did it go? Larry Coker was the last time that Miami won 11 games.
I couldn't tell. I can't remember.
That's been over 22 years.
So that would have been 2002. So that, again, that's what we're talking about here. You know, when they had Portis and those guys. Miami is, you know, very confident school. I mean, they get moment. You know, they love this and this and that in their history. But man, like you said, they have been a non-factor and non-existent for so long. People have forgotten about them. So our boys on the Locked On Canes podcast are trying to rally the troops down there.
Yeah,
and they've got some better players. They've got some better players, but it's a big game. And the Gators, I mean, this is it for Billy Napier. He's got to produce. So
yeah. Last night, if you missed it, some of the super regionals started. Oklahoma buried FSU in Norman, and their new ballpark is unbelievable.
They have history with FSU. They've played a bunch with FSU.
Dan says on Facebook Live, brought to you by Mellow Law, Corby Otis is a top 10 national player of the year, but the SEC player of the year, Jocelyn Erickson, didn't make the top 10. Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, Jocelyn Erickson.
Yeah, she was SEC player of the year, but she's not up for national player of the year. But Corby Otis, our left fielder, who came in second in player of the year, is. Interesting stuff.
It's a two-game. Well, I'm not going to jinx them, but I am very confident in Florida's ability this weekend with the Baylor Bears. I mean, credit to Baylor for getting there, but they've lost 21 games this year, and I can't see them catching lightning in a bottle, so to speak, against the University of Florida here in Gainesville, against that pitching and that hitting. And so I'm excited about Oklahoma City.
We got a lot of people chiming in about why the back pay, back to 2016. How are they going to figure out what to pay those people?
Well, that was in the text or in the transcript. I kind of passed on some of that. I just got the cliff notes. It comes from lawsuits that were brought up, and this is only going to feed more, QB. This is not going to end. I mean, there's going to be more litigation here. They believe that they have been cheated out of their share of the billions of dollars that's been created in this business called college athletics.
Why do I not feel like that? Like back in our heyday when we were, I guess because I grew up in the era where that's what college athletics was about. You pick a school, you go play, you love that school.
Well, it wasn't.
You make that school a lot of money, but that's just college athletics.
But it wasn't like you weren't getting anything. You got a scholarship.
Right.
You had tutors. You got free meals. You got dorms. You had things. You did get it. But the money with television got to be so big that right now television cares more about the guy sitting on his couch at 11 a.m. in the Central Time Zone watching Big Noon rather than the people spending the money at the game and spending the time to go through that experience with these ridiculous noon kickoffs and so forth. Television is what's paying all of these bills, and this is why we got into the situation we're in right now. And I'm okay with it, QB, because I love watching every game. But I got to be honest with you, at our age, I don't know if I watch it from, say, noon to midnight anymore. I can't stay up that long. And so I don't know who they're appealing to. I honest to God don't know who's going to watch football at 9 o'clock at night when you've been going through it all day long. You feel like falling asleep. At least that's how I feel. Damn.
So, I do it. Jimmy on YouTube brought to you by Quality Plumbing, says JC Shelton Walker from High Top Sports Podcast says the Gator football team is going undefeated this year. So, JC, just start your own podcast and tell them what you think.
Well, listen, man, they had it down. They had it all juiced up in the orange and green. Shelton Walker. Hey, listen, thanks for that. I don't know. I haven't seen that podcast with Shelton Walker, but I will tell you this, QB, after last year and the year before, I am out of the business of predicting wins. I'm going to leave that up to you and whoever wants to step out on that limb. I know Coach Spurrier has to do it because he's the ambassador and, take it with a grain of salt, 8 wins here, whatever. I'm out of that business because all it does is set you up for failure. I'm not going to do it. I'm not predicting wins. I'm just going to take them one game at a time. Miami is the only thing that matters. They must win that game. End of story, and we'll go from there.
They have to win that game.
They have to.
All right.
They have to.
This Day in Sports brought to you by Campus USA Credit Union. Put some star power to work in your financial life. Campus USA Credit Union. For all our Indianapolis 500 fans out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
In 2000, the 2000 champion Juan Pablo Montoya of Colombia sets a record for the most years between 2 victories in the race. It was 15 years since the last time he won. So that's This Day in Sports brought to you by Campus USA Credit Union.
I think the Grand Prix of Monaco is this weekend, and my youngest son is in Monaco for the Grand Prix of Monaco. Just throw that out there for you.
Is he excited for the race?
He's excited because it's all about pomp and circumstance on the French Riviera. That kid, God bless him. He's the one with the grapefruit kick that I showed you on the show a couple weeks ago. Hey, good pick on the tournament yesterday, QB, with Max Homa. Looking good there, +8.
Is he? I didn't look at it.
Yeah.
But hang on a second. Who else did I pick?
Well, you have it in front of you, don't you? No?
Somewhere on here.
I know you took Max
This
Homa.
used to be your job, and you got fired because you were terrible.
Well, I see you're lighting it up right now. Max Homa +8. I got Tony Finau -4, QB. I know that.
Yeah, I have Austin Eckroat, Keegan Bradley, I think, is 2 or 3 under.
Okay, so how about Scotty Scheffler at +2? I can't help but think he is tremendously distracted right now and just embarrassed by what. Well, I think he's embarrassed by what happened, the mugshot, the orange suit, this, that.
No, I get that, but it's all going to work out. I mean, it's ridiculous.
It is. But QB, I know he's human, but he shot 2 over yesterday. It's like, what? Scotty Scheffler at Fort Worth? No way. At Colonial, shooting 2 over? No way. He had a triple bogey on a par 3 on the back 9. That's kind of ruined his round. I would expect him to shoot much lower today.
Yeah.
Gator golf, man, this is a big deal. Is it being distributed anyway? I mean, can we watch it in any form?
Should be on the Golf Channel, but they're out in California, so it won't start till later the afternoon.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Well, ESPN2 today. If you can't be at the hole at the on campus there with Baylor,
I don't know why we always have to play the early game. Tomorrow's game is at 11 a.m.
I just don't understand it. I'll never understand why they put one of the warmest places on earth in the hottest part of the day. It's
hot no matter if it's 10:30 or 4 o'clock. It's the same temperature. I don't know why people complain about a 3:30 game.
Well, QB, try sitting in it, then you'll know.
Well, buy your tickets in the shade.
Where they don't have yeah.
Maybe they'll close by 3:30. By the end of the first quarter, the West stands are shaded.
And man, everybody, and that is true. You are right about that. And by the way, Jacksonville is going to get that stadium. Gainesville is one.
It's so damn dumb. They're putting turf in it. I have no idea why.
One of 2 choices. Well, true. As far as that construction goes, I don't understand that either. But one of 2 choices for Jacksonville. It's either Camping World Stadium or it's Florida Field. Think about those weekends we'll have in Gainesville if the Jaguars are playing a home game on the same weekend that the Gators are playing Auburn.
I think if that happens, they'll make sure they work it around where we're not playing on a Saturday and they're playing on a Sunday.
Yeah, they don't want that field to be.
I'm pretty sure that's how Clemson and did it with the Panthers.
QB,
but I personally think it's smarter for them to play in Orlando because it's just there's more room for people to park and it's open
I don't think
And
there should be Camping World Stadium is awful. It's in a ghetto. It's one of the worst places I've ever been
I
to.
didn't say anything about that. I said there's plenty of parking,
In
and
Orlando,
yes, Camping World Stadium, there's tons of parking around that place, way
there's
more
not.
than here, way more.
Yeah, all right, I'll give you that. Yeah, I mean, but as far as our 3:30 kickoff with Miami, I mean, the Odom lot's going to be flowing. It's going to be an incredible atmosphere. Who cares? You're right. I agree with that. Forget the weather. Just show up. At least it's not at 12 o'clock, and we can get on with it at a good time. People are going to be tanked up and ready to make a lot of noise, and that's what's going to be required. They've got to have an atmosphere in that stadium, and they will. I mean, it's the first game of the season. It's going to be it's going to be a spectacle on August 31st. Yeah.
All
I
right.
think
All right, JC, go watch your Miami podcast. We got to go. We got to get to Graham Hall. That's JC Joyce on the Tight Number Hotline, courtesy of Comfort Tent. Take a quick timeout. We'll have Graham Hall. Get your questions for the Gators ready. You're watching and listening to PodUp Matthews in the Morning. We want to take this moment to thank our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills. Our premium sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Titan MRI, Gainesville's only locally owned and operated MRI facility. Meldon Law, the only official injury and accident law attorneys of the Florida Gators. Peachland Dental, Gator Nation's first choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte. QC Kinetics, live pain-free with QC Kinetics. Campus USA, put some star power to work in your financial life with Campus USA Credit Union.
Comfort Temp. Comfort is our business, peace of mind is our promise.
Dave & Buster's, eat, drink, play, watch. Our gridiron sponsors are UF Bookstores, Silverback Concrete, Ruse Ogre State Farm Insurance, F45, Quality Plumbing. Our touchdown sponsors are Adams Ribs, Gator Dominoes, Celebrate Primary Care, Gator Bait Media, Okido America, Style Cuts, Ironwood Golf Course, Big Mills Cheesesteak, McDonald's of Gainesville, 84 Lumber, Dowling Signs, Baker Sporting Goods. If you're interested in promoting your business on the show, call Freddie at 352-284-3733. If you like what we're doing here, make sure to follow us and support the businesses that support us.
The Fisher House is here for the families and veterans that come here to the VA for serious treatment. And we're here to give them a home away from home.
Really nice to meet you.
welcome to our house.
Really blown away with the level of care, the level of service that they offer here. Some of it may be more routine, and some of it may be like, we gotta go now.
Yes.
Correct.
Because there's a ton to be said for coming through for people that chose a path, a little bit different path. That's why we're here today.
We're here to present these wonderful jerseys that Coach Billy Napier has so graciously given to the Fisher House that are going to be auctioned for the benefit of the house.
Anytime that we have a chance to give back to people who chose a career and a life of service and put their life at risk, right, to protect the simple things that we have access to each day, I think it's important that we do that. These jerseys are all for sale. They're on auction as we speak, right? And that goes all the way up until May 25th. I think this is an opportunity to not only purchase a pretty cool item, but also help the Fisher House at the same time.
We have 20 suites here at our house. That gives us the ability to serve between 1,200 and 1,500 families a year. It's for the serious treatment, the crisis in their life. So it's here that they find the comfort, find camaraderie with fellow guests. They're all going through the same thing at the same time. So they find that they're not alone here.
I would encourage anybody to do their homework on the Fisher House and get behind this cause.
Welcome back to the Crime Prevention Security System Studios, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Ruse Ogre State Farm Office is a team of dedicated insurance professionals ready to help life go right with the right insurance options for you and your family. Visit ogreinsurance.com. Give them a call at 352-240-1779. All right, we're going to go to the Titan Number Hotline, courtesy of Comfort Tent, and one of our wonderful guests who knows his stuff, best in the business, who is, some people play hurt and some people play. You can't play. You can play hurt, but you can't play injured. Graham Hall is injured, but he still showed up. Graham, you gotta show our listeners why you're injured. Let's see that cast.
Oh man, it's a nice one here, but we're all right. Just a thumb. We'll be all right. Hard cast for a month. It pales in comparison, like I said, to the injuries you've been through, Shane. So I can't complain, man. It's part of doing housework and cleaning outside, Unfortunate,
Yep,
but
for
hey,
sure.
off season is the perfect time for it to happen, right?
No, there's no question. Uh, we had a question for you, and you checked. A couple guys are not on campus yet, but will be moving in. Let us know who those two gentlemen are.
Yeah, I think the one that everyone is really excited to see on campus is Aaron Childs. I mean, that's the guy who a lot of people hoped he'd be an early enrollee. It wasn't possible, to my understanding, but Florida made a concerted effort throughout the spring to keep him in the loop. Austin Armstrong was reaching out to him several times a week to make sure that he was following a workout plan that they had devised for him and was starting to learn the scheme, even though he had not enrolled yet. He's going to be on campus either late Monday or early Tuesday of next week. So his arrival is imminent. And the other one is, I think, Amir Jackson, the tight end, who I think a lot of people, high expectations for him. He was a top 150 prospect in this class. And Florida, I think, certainly needs some depth at tight end to, boost a unit that is relying on a lot of underclassmen, a couple of guys entering their third year in Arliss Boardingham and Hayden Hansen. And who knows how much you're going to end up getting out of Keon Zipperer this upcoming season, but you get a talented guy in the building in Amir Jackson. How quickly he can get up to speed is certainly, I think, a point of interest for people inside the program and certainly outside. Last two are Caleb Rios and Jason Zandamela, who Florida added in the middle of May. They're going to be here in a couple of weeks, actually, early June. So a little bit more than a week away from those guys enrolling. You and I were talking about this. This is something that several of those players could end up making an impact. I think Aaron Childs of the group I just mentioned is the most likely to have early playing time here at Florida, even though you look at the linebacker unit, getting Shamar James back, adding Grayson Howard, having Derek Wingo coming back to the program. That's a unit that really shouldn't have to rely too much on freshmen. You got Miles Graham in there as well. He's coming back from that back procedure. But I think Aaron Childs has enormous potential, and there's a lot of people at Florida who are very eager to get their hands on him and have him start learning inside the program and seeing how he works. He'll be on campus, like I said, Monday or early Tuesday. And that's, I think, one of probably the most promising freshman additions that Florida is still waiting on, along with Amir Jackson.
All right, let's switch gears a little bit because we still have a couple people texting about the lawsuit with Jaden Rashada against Billy Napier and a couple other gentlemen. I'm sure you've been looking at it hard the last few days since it came out, maybe before that. Your thoughts, Graham, on what potentially might happen?
Yeah, I think I'll start a little bit earlier. You remember that, there was that NCAA investigation that came out regarding Florida's signing of Jaden Rashada. I think for once, Florida fans may have to be a little bit grateful to Tennessee Volunteers. If it wasn't for their lawsuit, the NCAA would still be heavily investigating this Jaden Rashada signing at Florida. That's on pause right now. I'm not saying that it's going to completely go away. I think a lot of that remains to be seen, but it was certainly something that was being looked into. And I do think you could make a case that there were people around Rashada's camp, who looked to capitalize on the poor optics surrounding Florida's signing of Jaden Rashada. This may be a situation that is reliant on the public perception. I would be surprised if Rashada's camp ends up getting what they want, which is a jury trial in this situation. Just knowing how many legal options Florida has, you would assume that they would attempt to settle this behind closed doors or take care of it. I don't think that this is going to be a situation that plays out very, very publicly. This could end up being one of the last things we see about it. But having read through the entire 37-page court case, I think that what really stands out to me the most is how much of this is reliant on text messages, verbal exchanges, alleged promises. And it took place at a time where Florida was in the middle of, I think, restructuring a lot of their NIL, whether it was Hugh Hathcock looking into selling his company, Velocity Automotive, Florida looking to move away from the Gator Collective and brand into Florida Victorious with new ownership and a new structure with, double-digit people involved as employees, really trying to make that more of a professional setting. And that may be something that I think plays in Florida's favor a little bit here, is that, a lot of the people who were involved in those initial discussions are not really huge power players for Florida right now. I do think that, and this is something I've heard floated by several people here, that if things don't go well for Billy Napier's team this year, is this going to be something that factors into Florida's decision to maybe make a change at head coach? I think it's way too soon to jump to those conclusions. Just for anyone out there who's thrown that out there, this could be the for cause that someone is looking for. We still don't know that Billy Napier has done anything wrong in this situation. And I think the last thing I'll say about this is, if you're a Florida fan, I do think that you also can sit there and say that they're a bit of a victim in a sense, because there is so much lack of clarity regarding NIL and what you can and can't do and how you can interact with these players. You really have been taking people, prospects, parents of kids at their word about what they're hearing from other programs. The lack of transparency is something that has been a huge issue throughout NIL. And you saw that alleged $9.5 million deal that Jaden Rashada was going to get from Miami. John Ruiz came out, not saying that John Ruiz is someone you should always take as at his word 100% of the time, but he came out and denied that right away. So I do think that there is maybe some things we don't know that happened behind the scenes of Florida finding out what Rashada's actual market value was, and maybe that late in the cycle, it being November through December, gave them some pause here in working out that deal with him. That's again just speculation. I can't say for certain, but there's certainly something that we don't know in those documents. And I would just encourage everyone to kind of have a wait and see approach with this. But at the same time, I don't really know how much more we're going to end up hearing on this, unless Florida goes kind of the Tennessee route and goes a little bit more on the aggressive and files a countersuit, or really defends themselves heavily. And just from having experience around this program for the last decade, that really isn't something I expect them to do too much, but we will find out. I think from an optic perspective, all the good momentum that Florida had in the national eye at the recruiting level for the last month, from landing Jason Sandamela, Elijah Badger, Cormani McLean, that it's kind of unfortunate that this story is going to overshadow so much of that. I know that recruiting matters absolutely, and you always want to focus on the players that you're bringing into the program rather than the players you missed out on. But from a national optic perspective, I think that there's got to be some frustration from Florida fans and from those inside Billy Napier's program that this is the story that is now dominating the headlines right now in this era where, we're talking about a house settlement revenue sharing agreement and what's going to happen to NIL next. It's kind of unfortunate for Florida and its fan base that we're talking about a player that didn't end up signing 16, 17 months ago. That's quite unfortunate in this day and age where you're focusing every day on recruiting 365 days a year. To be talking about a player from 500 days ago just seems it seems unfortunate in a sense here. And I think that you could certainly, if you're a fan or part of the program, you could make the argument that this is just a unnecessary headline that you would like to go away sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I agree. And I think winning football games, nobody will even think about this if you do that. Graham, I wanted to ask you, like with all the chat boards and all the shows you're on and stuff, do you feel like, how do I want to phrase this? I feel like Gator fans, they're rooting against Billy Napier. They want us to lose, so they make a move. They don't want us to win games. Why do I get that feeling? Do you get that sense from any other people you talk to or any shows you do?
I definitely see the jokes, and I see people who in this day and age are so heavily invested in being right. They want to be able to call it early if it's not going to work out for Billy Napier, so that they can sit there and say, hey, I was correct in my opinion that he's not the guy. And I do think that seems kind of to be the one with the good odds in a sense here, where you can sit here and say, oh, it's more likely based on this gauntlet that this is going to be his last year at Florida, that things are not going to go the way we planned, and that we're going to be looking for another coach. I mean, if you're making those takes to avoid being devastated here in November, I can understand that from an emotional perspective. We've also seen in recent years, whether it's Dan Mullen, Jim McElwain, where in July and August, you didn't see a head coach firing coming necessarily. I mean, this is, I think, a lot more of a situation that is likely that you have a coach who is going to continue to be on the hot seat for the next 6 months. So people are preparing themselves in the fan base, in my opinion, for disappointment, for the possibility, maybe even the likelihood that Billy Napier is going to be coaching for his job this season. And in this day and age where everyone's got a take to fire off and wants to look very, very in the know and correct, I understand why a lot of people are making those takes. If you're a Florida fan, though, rooting, let me just say this, for Billy Napier to fail, and Shane, I know you share this sentiment with me, I do think that's really unfortunate because, one, it's going to cost your program a lot of money. Fans will feel the effect. And from the coaches that I've been around since I've been on this beat since 2014 now, Billy Napier is a really, really good man. I think that gets left out of the discussion a lot of the time. He does things the right way, is respectful, is a very, very kind, genuine, good person. He cares about the players. I've never seen anything that has led me to believe in the last 2.5 years that that's not the case. And if you're rooting for someone or spewing vitriol against them online and ripping them because you don't like the way that the games have played out on the field, there is something about that that's pretty sad to me, because I think you're missing the fact that this is someone you should want to root for because they're a good person, easy to like. If you met them in real life, I say this all the time to people on message boards, if you met this person in real life, you wouldn't be making those comments to their face that you're making online. And I think that we entered an era where it's much easier to say disparaging comments about people you don't even know. And I tell those people all the time, if you met this person, you'd feel bad about a lot of the things that you said. And I think a lot of that applies to Billy Napier. Am I saying that I think he's going to be a championship winning head coach at Florida? I don't know. I think that remains to be seen. But I do know that this is from a personal, a human element standpoint, this should be someone that you want to see things go right for. And I would kind of like, in this day and age where so much recruiting is out of the hands of a coach and there's so many crazy factors from the transfer portal to NIL, that maybe we can not focus so much on what a coach hasn't done and focus on who they are. And maybe that's a message that people are going to laugh at, but I would just encourage people to maybe reorient their view of Billy Napier and understand that it isn't always about X's and O's and wins and losses, but you have someone at your program that a lot of people would love to play for and would be proud to have as their head coach. And if the odds, if the record was different here, this would be someone that people were talking about as a stand-up guy who has things figured out. And it's unfortunate to me that was the narrative for him when he was at Louisiana. There was so much focus on the service acts that he did there. They had multiple double-digit win seasons, and now things have become crazy in college football. NIL is a huge factor now, transfer portal, of course, and people have kind of let that bleed over into their opinion of who he is as a person. And I do think there's something quite unfortunate about that when you really take a step back and look at the situation as a whole.
Yeah. My thoughts on Billy, I think Billy's a good football coach. Has he made some bad calls or bad decisions? Yes. Okay. But he walked into a dumpster fire, and I think people will finally realize it. And the way I like to say, this is how you know, okay? The best players that have been on the Florida Gator roster since Billy Napier's been the coach, he is solely responsible for. Okay. He brought them here. You have not put many players into the National Football League since he's been here. Okay. That should tell you something, because that is the best players in the world. They're going to find you if you're good enough to play. The players that have transferred, and whether they have little jabs, comments to belittle the coaching staff, okay, you're talking about 20, 22, 23-year-old guys that really don't know football. They've just been playing football, and none of them, other than Tyron Hopper, who I thought was a really good player, and I think he transferred just to go play with his cousin or whatever. None of the other ones have been worth a damn anywhere, quite honestly. I mean, I may be missing a couple guys, but so anyway, I'm just telling the Gator fans, and a lot of people are commenting, if we were to get rid of him, as you mentioned, financially, it would set us back. It would just devastate us. So I think people need to put on your big boy pants. It's a hard ass schedule. Embrace it, enjoy it, and root for the Gators to win. So, has anybody that transferred? I just want to know if I'm putting you on the spot here. Has anybody been productive anywhere they've transferred?
I don't think so necessarily right now. I mean, there were guys that the fan base were devastated to lose. Chris Bogle comes to mind when he went to Michigan State that didn't really do anything when they got there. You know, I think that you could say Donovan McMillan, when he went to Pittsburgh, had a good season, but his circumstances were not totally related to football. You know, he was rooming with Jalen Kitna. I think that this is, you know, there's some things that are out of a head coach's control.
Yeah.
But I think that when you compare them to what you just said, the players that Billy Napier has brought in, it absolutely is in Billy Napier's favor. From Osiris Torrance, Ricky Pearsall, Montrell Johnson, Graham Mertz proved everyone wrong last year, and I think is going to prove more people wrong this year. I think that the recruiting classes that they've got, the players that they were able to get in last year who were able to make an impact, those absolutely outweigh the players who have transferred out. And I do see that kind of gets missed online a good bit, where so much of the focus is, or it certainly was in December, was on the massive exodus that left the program. When you saw 22 players left, a lot of people were saying, oh, that's an indictment of Billy Napier. Let's pump the brakes a little bit and see how they do. I think the big one that still remains to be seen is Trevor Etienne. I mean, if Trevor Etienne goes on and has a productive career and stands out in the NFL, then yeah, sure, you can say, well, we should have kept him in the fold. But I do think that his current status at Georgia, it makes that, I think, a little bit less likely than when he left in December. We'll have to see what happens with him, and maybe that's one that's a knock against Billy Napier and the talent that he's been able to keep. But from a large overall standpoint right now here in May, I do think it's kind of crazy that people think that the transfers out outweigh the transfers in, because I do not see it that way whatsoever.
No, it's not even close. All right, so let's switch gears a little bit. Now collegiate athletes are going to be paid by the school. There's a lot into this whole deal. We don't know everything yet, but I mean, I'm not for it. I know it's today's world, but I don't know how they're going to police it. Some schools are going to have more money than the others. Will there still be NIL money on the side from this, Graham?
Absolutely. And I think that I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that's something that people are missing when they talk about the what this does for college football, because I've seen all the takes of people saying, oh, this is going to be great. It's going to lead to more transparency. We're going to actually know what players are making. It's going to be a more even playing field. Stop that. Stop that. There is still going to be big money boosters, NIL donors, who are going to, maybe even a little bit more under the table now, be able to offer athletes an additional incentive on top of what they could be getting from the school. So if anything, I think it's just more to the pool. And when you look at the revenue sharing and what these schools are going to make from the new media rights deal, from the 12-team college football playoff that, who knows, could continue expanding, I do think that there's an argument, a fair argument to be made, that the players should deserve a piece of the pie. But without cleaning up the NIL stuff, without having some actual oversight and policing of NIL, and without having a fair structuring of the teams outside the quote unquote Power Four, you're going to just, I think, have a little bit less competition than you had the last couple of years. One of the things that I liked was that NIL did, and transfer portal, a combination of those two, did lead to some schools who normally didn't have a shot be able to be a little bit more competitive, because they could get players from programs who were talented but maybe were at a loaded position. And if your fan base or your school had a big money booster who owned a big company, you instantly could close the gap of being competitive. And I did think from a a competitive standpoint, that was a little bit fascinating to me, that you actually could have people who made their money at a university, supported that university, actually make a significant impact on the football field pretty much overnight. I did like that aspect. That's not going to go away in my mind, but I do think that it's going to be a lot more favored towards the Power 4 teams, and it is going to lead to more issues. This really just happened, in my opinion, to alleviate some of the pressure the NCAA is facing from the legislation, the court cases they faced, and from so many people just talking about for so long about how they've been taking advantage of quote unquote student athletes, a term that should be thrown out, in my opinion. I'm not really someone who's massively in favor for this solution. I'm in favor for athletes getting paid. Do not get me wrong. I think that they deserve it. I think that there needs to be more resources to ensure that these athletes are wisely managing their money, are being taken care of, and they're getting what they're promised. I mean, we just talked about the Jaden Rashada lawsuit. If this legislation can lead to less he said, she said civil lawsuits, in my mind, that's one less thing for coaches have to worry about in an era where there already is so much more on their plate. I really would like to see changes like analysts being able to coach on field, a little bit more structuring, some transparency of announcing when you have NIL deals and knowing how much each player makes. I would like to see those implemented before I'm very positive in the direction that things are going right now.
Yeah, it's nuts. It's just, I just hope this he said, she said, whatever, this lawsuit, that we really did not offer that kid that kind of money. That's what's embarrassing to me. I mentioned all week long, Graham, on my program, that there are guys that play in the National Football League that sign 3-4 year contracts that don't make that kind of money. And it's just, it's ridiculous if we did offer that. Good stuff as always. A lot of people here chiming in that Antoine Powell Ryland had a good year at Virginia Tech. Maybe he did. I mean, it's the ACC, and he was a good player. I liked his motor.
Yep.
But I will trade him for about 3 or 4 of the transfers that came in, I guess. Got any specials going on right now or anything coming up?
We're gonna run one pretty soon here, absolutely, where you can take advantage of getting, I believe, 30% off right now. But if you're interested in joining, reach out to me on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, at Graham Hall. And last thing I got to say about the Jaden Rashada thing, just to clear some things up for people, I would be surprised if anyone was going to pay him $13.85 million up front. I do think that a lot of these quote unquote verbal agreements, contracts, whatever you want to call them, the way that they are set up is best case scenario, where if you end up hitting so and so benchmarks, leading your team to a national championship, winning the Heisman, staying for 4 or 5 years, you could make this much money. And we often see those huge 8-figure sums thrown out there as if these programs are offering that right up front. And maybe he was led to believe that, but there is no program, from my understanding, out there that responsibly is offering players at the high school level to make that much money. Could I see 6 figures? Absolutely. But there's not a program out there. If they were doing that, then I think that kind of adds credence to the belief that their NIL structure need to be restructured a little bit.
No doubt. Good stuff as always, my man. Appreciate your time. Get that hand well, and we'll talk to you soon.
Always my pleasure. Y'all take care. Thanks, Shane.
Yeah, one of the best in the business, Graham Hall from 24/7 Sports. Hope you enjoyed today's program. I want to thank him and JC for joining us on the Titan More Hotline, courtesy of Comfort Town. Have a great day, folks. Good luck to the Lady Gators in lacrosse, softball, and the boys golf team out in California. Let's get it done. Have a great day and take care.